seem to go on, feeling lost and ashamed. I'm in chains, but soon to be wrong.
G'day, I'm Roland Hearn, and this is a walk in the garden. Earlier in the week I was thinking about where I could come today and video the walk in the garden, and I remembered one of my favourite spots. This is Kondalilla Falls. We used to come here a lot when we were teenagers, and it is a really beautiful spot and well worth a walk through as we talk about some issues this morning. Hear the whipbird? Pretty awesome, eh? This is the pool that we used to come and swim at when we were kids. Kondalilla, in the language of the local Aboriginal peoples, means rushing water. I am quite the linguistic, but you might wonder where I get my education from. Well, it's been a long, hard journey of seeking to understand the peoples of the area in which I live. Kondalilla is a part of the Blackall Ranges, and in 1840 the entire area of the Blackall Ranges was declared a reserve by the then governor in order to protect the bunya pines, which produce a nut that was a major food crop for the Aboriginal peoples. So in order to care for those people and this environment, this entire area was declared a reserve. Quite forward thinking, don't you think? Of course, it wasn't too long before settlers started to realise that the enormous trees in this area had a great deal of financial value to them, and the reserve declaration was reversed and logging started in earnest in this area. However, in 1906, Kondalilla was declared a reserve in itself. Those bunya pines produce a major nut crop every 3 years. I don't know if that's the only time they produce nuts, but they do produce a major crop every 3 years. The local people, the Kabi and the Waka Waka, I'm not sure I said those names right, but they would hold a festival at that time, and people would come from all the coastal tribes and the inland tribes, and they would gather together for a time of enormous social revelry, dancing and eating, and even arranging marriages. When European settlers came to the area, they also saw this as a great place to come and gather and enjoy holidays, and it took on a very special place in people's hearts. In 1945, the whole area became a national forest, and has continued to play a very special part in the lives of local people, of whom I am one. Today I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, and I'm hoping it doesn't backfire. I am going to tell you a little story that involves some people I know, and I haven't asked their permission, but I come from the school of it's easier to get forgiveness than it is to get permission sometime. I know these two people very, very closely, as you'll hear in a couple of seconds, and I love them dearly, so hopefully they'll forgive me for this. The reason I want to tell you this story in this beautiful environment is because it rests upon one of the foundational principles of the walk in the garden, and that is the idea of love and worth. But contained within the idea of love and worth is the nature of love, that love leads us towards more love. If we remain open and vulnerable in a situation, then love leads to more love. That's because we long to love. We love loving, and our worth as human beings is deeply integrated into that idea of love. And so when we open ourselves up, we begin to see things very, very clearly. So what it is that becomes clear to us is that the more we love, the more valuable we feel, and the more we want to journey into that space of love. So here's the story. My daughter Kayla went through a period of uncertainty in her life. She wasn't sure what she wanted to do with it. She tried different educational paths, she tried different jobs, she tried different relationships. Wasn't really sure of where her life was going. Then she decided she wanted a career in the police force, and so she applied to enter the police force. But her experience in that area of the world was fairly limited, and her first application was turned down. But she was told that if she had a part of her life that applied to policing, her application would be a lot stronger. So she applied for and received a job with the Police Emergency Call Centre in Brisbane. And on her very first day, she met somebody that was following a similar path in their life. And I remember, I don't know, it was certainly within the first week, she told me about a young man that they went to buy lunch together on one of their shifts, and she really enjoyed his company. It wasn't very long before they were dating, and it wasn't long after that before this guy came into our family. This is Oliver Murphy, and Ollie, as we all call him, is very much a part of our lives. But it has been an incredibly wonderful thing to watch Kayla and Ollie's relationship develop, watched with a real sense of pride that only fathers know, as this young man started loving and affirming my daughter. He made an enormous amount of difference in her life. And it wasn't long before his life began to unfold in the direction that he desired it to. And not long ago, he finished the training and was commissioned as a police officer in the Queensland Police Force. Of course, not all relationships that involve love are romantic, nor are they family, but it's the same process. As we make ourselves vulnerable to people, we move into a closer and closer space with them. And of course, I will talk about vulnerability in another video, but it is that idea of opening up our hearts to somebody and inviting them into our lives to get to know us. That process is incredibly valuing. In fact, I did talk about vulnerability a few weeks ago, didn't I? That process is incredibly valuing and affirming, and it invites into that space of love. The journey in the garden is the journey of love. The richness of life, the wonder of life, comes from that process of living a life that is open and accessible and vulnerable to others. Ollie has gone through a very, very difficult time in recent days. His dad passed away recently, and I never got to meet him, and for that I do feel regret. But I've watched Ollie handle this transition in his life to becoming a police officer, and losing his dad. And I've watched how deep his character and integrity is. I've been incredibly proud of him and thrilled that I've got to be a piece of this journey with him. This video in part comes as a way of telling Ollie how much I love him and value him and appreciate him. Couldn't thank him more for the way that he has embraced and cared for my daughter. Those are the kinds of experiences that give your life richness and fullness and wholeness. And for that I'm deeply grateful. But this is the journey in the garden. The truth is, it doesn't require romantic relationships, nor does it require family relationships, although all of those are part of the tapestry and wonder of love and relationships. What it requires, however, in order to make this journey, this walk in the garden valuable, is a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to be open, a willingness to be embracing. And when you meet somebody new, watch what happens if you treat them with honor, with integrity, with dignity, and just become engaged in their life. Watch how easily it happens that we walk more and more deeply into ever and closer relationships with people that we are vulnerable to. Well, thanks for coming along this journey with me down to Kondalilla Falls. Kayla, Ollie, I love you guys. Wish you all the best and look forward to many years of openness, vulnerability and happiness together. All right, everyone, keep walking in the garden and I'll see you next week. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Next week, back together with Chang, and that will be an exciting video.